want to welcome everybody, give my little welcome here to everybody in this room, those of you that are out in the atrium, and if you're joining us online or on demand, whatever the case would be, welcome. And I am John Smith. If you know me, if you don't know me, I'm still John Smith. But I did work here like 100 years ago. And it's good to be back, always good to be back. And I get to wrap up our series that's called The Healing Circle. And today we're going to talk about something that God wants all of us to excel at, something God wants all of us to be extraordinary at. And that is community, relationships. The English author John Donne said a long time ago, "No man is an island unto himself." We were not made that way. We need each other. We're made for human connections. In fact, happy people are connected people. Somebody said, a dog is man's best friend. And depending who the men are you hang out with, that could be true. Somebody said, outside of a dog, though, a book is man's best friend. I don't know about that, but I know inside a dog, it's too dark to read. Yogi Berra said once, if you don't go to somebody's funeral, they're not going to go to yours. Kids and parents, ask your grandparents who Yogi Berra was. But Jesus said this. Somebody came to him one day. They said, Lord, what's the most important commandment? What's the number one commandment? We know all 10. Give us the number one. And Jesus didn't quote any of the 10. This is what he said, Matthew 22:37. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. And then he said, that's the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. The second is the exact same thing. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, I'll give you what's most important. Love God and love people. And we love God by loving people. We talk about that around here all the time. And notice, Jesus didn't talk about religion. He didn't talk about rules and rituals. He talked about relationships. This is what we were created for, a relationship with God and a relationship with people. That's what we're put on this planet to be involved in. In fact, in the first chapter of Genesis, after it says God created the land and the plants and the first human being that the story calls Adam, God looked at it all and said it was good. It was very good when he looked at that creative challenge and he finished it. But after he looked at the man that the story calls Adam, God said it's very good. But then it didn't take God long to notice something that he had created that wasn't good. He looked at that first man, Adam, and he looked at him and went, not good, not good, not good. Now, why did God say that? I imagine if God had a head, he would have shaken it. Not good. Why did God say that when he looked at the first man, Adam? Is it because God likes women more than men? No is the answer I was searching for there. No is the correct theological answer there. God was making a radical comment about the fundamental importance of human relationships. And there was a loneliness that God noticed developing in the soul of that first man, Adam. And in Genesis 2:18, God said, it's not good for men and women, to be alone. And if you're taking notes, you could write this down. We were created for relationships. That's the first fill-in, I think. The first fill-in. We're created for relationships. All of us. One of the most famous research projects ever done on the importance of human relationships. It was called the Alameda County Study, and it was headed up by Harvard social scientists. Took place over 9 years where they tracked the lives of 7,000 people, residents of Alameda County, California. And they found people who were not connected to other people, they were 2 to 3 times more likely to die an early death I mean, these were very interesting findings. They discovered people that had bad health habits, actually, people that smoked or poor eating patterns or obesity, or maybe they abused alcohol and so on, but they had strong relational connections. They lived significantly longer than people that had good health habits but were isolated. In other words, they found it's better to eat Twinkies with friends than to eat broccoli alone. I mean, this is scientifically established and written up. There's another study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They took 276 volunteers, and they infected them with the virus that produces the common cold. And in this study, again, published in the Journal of the AMA, they found people that had deep relationships, they did 4 times better in fighting off a common cold than those people that were isolated. People that had strong relational connections, they were less susceptible to colds. And if they got one, they shed the cold better. They produced significantly less mucus than relationally unconnected people. I'm not making this up. Unfriendly people are snottier than friendly people. But I believe this study simply confirms at a biological level what the scriptures have said a long time ago and what indigenous people have always valued. They've always valued relationships. You and I were created for relationships, for community. And in fact, here's another fill-in. Community is a central component of our well-being. It's true. Community, relationships. It's a central component to our well-being. Most people are unaware of this. Here's another one you can write down. Lack of connections, lack of human connections has taken a toll on our health. It has. In 1980, 20% of people said that they reported that they were lonely. Today, it's around 60% of people that report they're lonely. Well, you could have hundreds of Facebook friends. We could have hundreds of Facebook friends. But if you have got 2 or 3 close friends, you are very fortunate. You're a fortunate person if you have 2 or 3 or 4 close friends today. That's amazing. Amazing. 1 in 5 people today. In the United States, 1 in 5 people say they have no close friends. 20%. And this has nothing to do with being single or married. I've known many single people that have very deep, intimate, meaningful relationships. And I've known many married people that are desperately lonely. It's not about marriage. Marriage does not solve the issue of the need that we have. Community does, though. And in the time that I have left here, I want to talk about community, what it is, what it isn't, because I'm tossing the word around a lot already. So just so you know what I'm talking about, what I'm not talking about when I say community, I want to look at 4 things. And these are definitions I've read that people have said what community is. First one is this: it's knowing and being known. That's community. And most of us, we gravitate to book clubs or biking groups, hiking groups, different things like that, running clubs, maybe even a health club, taking an exercise class, or a church maybe, because somewhere floating around inside of us is this deep yearning to know some people and to be known by them. And you might be thinking right now, well, John, if this is so central to our health, why don't we end the service right here? Why don't we just go out in the atrium, grab coffee and cupcakes or whatever they have out there today? And why don't we just get about spilling our guts to each other? Get about being known and knowing other people. It's not that easy, is it? It's not that easy. No, I think you think about our busy schedules that we have today. How often do you hear people say something like, hey, we got to get together soon? Let's have coffee or lunch when things settle down. Or you know what? This fall, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to volunteer somewhere in the community, maybe even a church. I'm going to jump in and do that. Once my schedule gets back to normal. And we know that very often that never happens. It doesn't. Maybe the single greatest barrier to deep relationships that we have today, deep connections, is simply our pace of life today. We're just so busy. So busy. We can't fit meaningful relationships into an overburdened schedule. We just can't. And so if you value this idea and maybe you're lacking on some friendships or you have some, you want to deepen them, you're going to have to rearrange some things. So will I. Need to create some structure, some routines that would support building these relationships that actually mean so much to it. I guarantee it'll cost you time and effort to build relationships today. It will. To schedule coffee with somebody or go golfing or hiking, go to a concert, walk Spring Creek Garden, whatever, where the only agenda is just to hang out. That'll take you time and effort. It will. But it's not only our busy schedule, I think. I think fear can stop us on this one from knowing and being known by other people. I think fear of rejection. What if I reach out to somebody and they never call back or respond, or they go, get out of here. No, I'm not doing that with you. That can happen. It at least slows us down. Or what about this one? We're afraid of letting people know who we really are, maybe. We don't want people to know who we really are. And I don't want to shock you, but I'll let you in on a little truth right here. Little truth. Everybody knows you're not perfect. They already know it. They do. This may be a complete surprise to us. Everybody around you knows you're not perfect. Why pretend? Nobody's got it all together. Nobody. I don't. My family and my friends that are here are nodding. Yeah, I don't. You don't. We're all imperfect. So why kid ourselves? Why pretend otherwise? In fact, I'll tell you a little bit of theological truth about the nature of human beings, so that we all understand this. It's very brief. Doctrinal statement, theological truth about human beings. I can give it to you in 2 words. Human nature in 2 words. Here it is. Everybody's weird. If you forget everything else, remember that. In fact, say it with me out loud. Everybody's weird. That's right. Everybody. Everybody has woundedness, right? Everybody has habits they're trying to break. Everybody's got blind spots they're not aware of. Everybody's got fear and pride and junk that hasn't been transformed yet. In fact, do me a favor, if you would. Do me a favor. Just turn and look at a person. Maybe they're sitting next to you, or maybe they're sitting behind you. Physically turn and just look at them for a second. Maybe it's somebody you've wanted to look at the entire service. This is your chance. Go ahead, look at them. Don't wink at them or anything, but just take a look at them. Now, that person looks like they got it together pretty good, right? They look like their lives they look pretty respectable. I know there's a few exceptions here, but most people look like they got it pretty together. From up here, you all look like you got it under control. Like you haven't deviated from the path too far. From up here, it looks that way. But you want to know the truth about that person you looked at? I'll tell you the truth about that person you looked at for one moment there. Here's the truth about that person. The full truth is that person has thought things, said things, done things, that if you knew the full truth about that person, it'd blow you right out of your seat. It would. You'd be shocked. You'd be appalled. And I noticed stuff. I was a pastor here, right? I got files on all these people here. We don't have to be perfect to enter into community with people. Do you know what we need to be? Real. real. We need to be honest. If we want to build trusting relationships, I mean, it takes time, but we need to be real. Just be honest, not pretend. Here's the second component. It's loving and being loved. That's number 2. Loving and being loved. And the jury has already come in on this one. Unless we're exchanging irrational levels of love with a few people in our life, we're slowly dying on the inside. And again, somebody here is thinking, well, if loving and being loved, John, if that's so important, why don't we go out in the atrium, get coffee? Or why don't we put on beads, jump into VW vans like they did in the 60s, crank up Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys and just do the loving thing? Again, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. We often feel inept at expressing feelings of love to somebody. I meet people all the time who seem to not feel anything on the inside because they've never exchanged, they never had anyone give them levels of irrational love in their own life. They never felt it. They never felt that kind of irrational, all-accepting love from their parents. They don't feel it from their spouse. They don't feel it from friends. And now they're completely like numbed out when it comes to this. Now at this stage of their life. During World War II, there was a disease, mysterious disease, that broke out in Europe after World War II. It was, and people that discovered it, the doctors, they named it marasmus. And it was discovered in a group of orphan children, babies, infants. And they had placed these orphans from World War II, parents had died, into these care facilities. And they thought they provided everything the kids needed. They had beautiful colors in the rooms and new furniture and the best of food, everything they thought the kids needed to survive. But the health of these infants began to deteriorate rapidly. Toys were ignored, the food was left untouched, their tiny systems got weaker and weaker. They became very lethargic, fragile, and then the worst of all, the nightmare happened. Some of them began to die. And doctors were flown in to try to figure out a prescription for what was going on. What was happening? What had they missed? And the doctors weren't there very long when they made a prescription that they hoped would work. And this is what the prescription was. They said for every hour, every infant was to be held for 10 minutes by a nurse or volunteer and talked to, played with, hugged, and kissed. In the midst of providing what they thought was just what the kids needed, they missed this. And it worked. It worked. They were trying to care for the kids in all these physical ways, and they missed what they needed most, maybe, was human touch, a relationship, somebody to connect with in a loving way. And you know what I think? I don't think we ever grow out of that. I don't think we do. I don't think that's something that stops being a need in our lives. And the reason the Bible would say is we're created for relationships. We're created for community. This is why we were made. I mean, one of the striking things about Jesus, when he wanted to convey love to somebody, he often touched them. Little children would come up to him. They would come up to him. And Jesus' disciples would tell the kids, get out of here, he's too busy for you. Jesus would stop him. This is in Mark 10, the New Testament. He'd say, wait, let the little children come to me. For such belongs the kingdom of God. And then it says that he would pick up the kids, put his hands on their heads, and he would bless them. In Luke 5, there were times when Jesus would go up to lepers, people that had leprosy, the skin disease. Most of them hadn't been touched since they got the illness. They were put in colonies, separated from everybody. You couldn't get within 10 feet of somebody with leprosy. That was the law. It's conceivable. Some of these lepers hadn't been touched since they got the disease, like 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. The Bible says when Jesus wanted to heal them, what he would do? First thing he'd do, he'd walk up, right up to them, put his arms around them, and hold them. Do you imagine how powerful it was to be held for the first time in 15, 20 years? Jesus knew the power of touch and conveying love to people. So this definition, community, is knowing and being known. It's loving and being loved. And here's another one, a third one. It's serving and being served. Essential to community, serving and being served. Servanthood is at the core of what this is all about. Philippians chapter 2, Paul said, do nothing out of selfishness or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. Look not only to your own interests, but also look to the interest of others. And Jesus went to great lengths to convince his disciples. The me-first mindset's got to be eventually exchanged for an others-first mindset. And I think the most stirring example of this is probably found in John chapter 13, where Jesus' 12 disciples are standing around with Jesus before dinner, and their feet are all dirty. And they're looking around. They're looking for the kid that's supposed to come and wash their feet. And the kid's not there. There's a bowl of water and a towel on the floor. The disciples, I can imagine, are looking at each other. I'm not doing it. One of them, I got seniority in this group. There's no way I'm washing you guys' feet. Who's the rookie? Get the rookie, the new one. That's the one that's going to get stuck with the job. And Jesus, realizing as he's watching this, he realizes community among his followers doesn't have a prayer of happening without them being willing to be served and to serve each other. So what does Jesus do? He takes the towel. He picks up the bowl. And he washes the feet of his followers. And in doing so, he establishes once and for all the absolute centrality of servanthood to the very idea of community. One of Jesus' best one-liners that has affected me my whole adult life since I heard it 40-some years ago for the first time. When Jesus said, you want to be great in God's eyes? When I heard that 40-some years ago, I thought, wow, everybody wants to be great in God's eyes, don't they? This is what he says, Mark 10:43. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. That's how greatness is defined. That's the litmus test of greatness in the kingdom of God. To the extent that we see ourselves in our lives as servants to one another. And by the way, a tremendous way to build friendship, it is to serve somewhere in our community. I know from working at the hospital myself that the number of volunteers at these hospitals, that number has never come back to what it was before COVID. Volunteers are needed at the hospital, but volunteering wherever you feel drawn. I mean, volunteering here at the church, so many opportunities. But wherever you feel drawn. And when you're working with people shoulder to shoulder, and I'm not talking one time, but when you do it consistently, you get to know some people pretty well. And who knows what God might do. I mean, you might develop a friendship that lasts your entire life. But like all of these things I'm talking about, you know, it's your move. It's my move. We're the ones that have to make it happen. They don't just happen. Let me end with this one. The fourth one. Community is about celebrating and being celebrated. Community is about, it's really, I could sum it, it's doing life together is what it is. Experiencing life together. Doing the high side of life. Jumping right in and celebrating with our friends. The first century weddings were an unbelievable occasion, or a raucous occasion. They lasted weeks at a time, these weddings. There'd be a party a day or two at the bride's house, and Then they would move the party to the groom's house, where the to-be groom, they'd have a party there a couple days, and then as the weekend approached, they would have this all the people would go to the bride's house, and with her family, they'd parade through the town, end up at the groom's house where there was going to be this big ceremony. They'd have a beautiful ceremony. Then after, they'd have receptions that were unbelievable. Music, dancing, lots of food, a crazy time. Wine, lots of wine. They would do this kind of thing. A lot of fun. Way too much fun for religious people. I mean, they criticized Jesus severely because he went to these things. But you know what? He went anyway. He didn't care. He went anyway. His first miracle, John chapter 2. He was at one of these weddings. They ran out of wine. He produced more wine for the occasion. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? Why would he be part of such a rowdy celebration like that? He wanted to be part of the celebratory events in the lives of people he loved. That's why. He knew his presence would bring joy to an already joyous occasion. Yeah. You know, it means something. It means something when you show up at a friend's birthday party. It means something. It means something when you show up at a wedding or an anniversary. It means something. You know, some milestone in somebody's life, graduation. It means something to you when people show up at your events like that. It means something to you when people throw a party for you just because they care about you, or you got some promotion or some milestone in your life. It means something to you, and it does to me. So the question is, why don't we do this more often? Why don't we throw parties for our friends and just say, this is just about how much we care for you. We're throwing you a party. We should do that more often. Saying I care about you. And I'm going to add my own spin to this fourth definition of celebrating and being celebrated. Yeah, community's doing the high side, jumping in, doing the celebratory events with people in our life. But here, my spin comes right out of Romans 12:15. We rejoice with those who rejoice. We celebrate. But we also mourn with those who mourn. So my spin is this. Community is also waiting and weeping with each other. You could write that down. It's waiting and weeping with each other. Waiting with those who are weeping. And nobody should wait for something and weep alone. And I'm talking about waiting for possible bad news and then weeping with each other when the bad news maybe comes. When people get hit by certain tragedies of life, we're there waiting with them and weeping. And there are situations in life nobody should go through alone. Nobody. Nobody should ever have to wait at a hospital alone while a loved one is going through a life or death surgery. Nobody. Nobody should have to wait for bad news about a son or a daughter alone. Nobody should have to stand at the edge of an open grave alone. Nobody. Nobody should have to wait alone for the funeral home to come or the coroner to come and take the body of a loved one who has just died. Nobody should have to wait for that alone. Nobody should have to spend the first night alone when their spouse or partner has passed away. No one. Nobody should have to ever spend the first night alone after a partner, a spouse, a husband, wife has walked out. Nobody should have to spend that night alone. In fact, some of these things are going to happen. I mean, this is just life. I'd like to say otherwise, but Jesus said in this life we face tragedies. And we do. They're inevitable. I mean, you're going to have some loved ones that die. You are. You're going to go through some tragedies. You're going to get a bad health report at some point. or someone you love will get it. But fortunately for us, in the midst of all that, God has provided a safety net for us. God has. And the safety net is a community. A community, a group of caring people, a group of loving friends. That's the safety net God has provided. Maybe it's a church. When my wife Phyllis passed away 2 years ago, me, my daughters, Rachel and Jessica, my 7 grandkids, we appreciated so much and still talk about the support that we got from our friends and from the church, and the hundreds of people that filled this room at her memorial service. We still talk about it. Ryan and the staff were here. There were former staff that came from out of town, flew from California and all over to be with us, to support us. Hundreds of you were there. That meant a lot to us. It meant a lot to me. I'll never forget that. Ever. Ever. And when you show up for these, when you're helping someone, you don't have to have all the right words. There are no right words often. We just show up. We're just there. We're just there for them. That's it. Show up. When we show up for people's celebrations, we multiply their joy. And when we show up in the difficult times of life, we divide their sorrow. And we share it with them. So that's my time today. And what's God inviting you into today? What's God inviting you into? Maybe it's to take a risk. Get together with somebody this week. Deepen a relationship. Maybe invite somebody to have coffee or lunch or happy hour or something. Come to the Thursday night conversation group right here. You can't just come once and say, well, I didn't meet somebody, but you come consistently. I mean, you have a good discussion about these weekend messages, but you meet people. Volunteer for something where you're drawn into community, with parks, up in the mountains, with national parks. There's all kinds of opportunities. Volunteer right here. So many opportunities here. I know the Summer Bash needs volunteers. I mean, it's a great way to connect with some people. I guarantee you, volunteer with something consistently, you're going to meet some good people. And who knows what God might do. In fact, when the service is over, I know some people got to leave immediately. But if you can hang around, instead of spinning on your heels, like go in the atrium, grab coffee or something. Shake somebody's hand. Hang out. Make that a habit. Just see what God might do. Who knows? Take the risk. And I think you'll be glad you did. Well, we celebrate communion every week here at Crossroads. And you don't have to be a member of the church. This could be your first time at church, or maybe it's your last time at the church. But communion is for you. It's God's gift to us that expresses God's love for us in all our weirdness. God loves us just the way we are. And so communion's for everyone. There's stations around the room. You just serve yourself and take it whenever you want. But it's a reminder of what Jesus has done for us and the love that he showed us. Because the night he was betrayed, the disciples are all around. They didn't even know what he was going to do. But he picks up a loaf of bread. And he says, this is my body that's going to be broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And he passed it around. Then he took the cup, the wine. He said, this is my blood that's going to be poured out for all of you. All of you. Take and drink this. And remember me. So the band will lead us. We'll take communion, and then I'll come back, and we'll have the blessing, and we'll be gone.